Hi, I'm Benjamin Yang, and on this channel, I create videos talking about living in JB, Malaysia, whilst earning Singaporean dollars. These are two different countries if you're not aware. In this upcoming part of the video, I'm going to focus on the 5 reasons why I've decided to do so. And there's one additional reason, but because it is very sensitive, I'm going to put a link in the video description below for your reference if you're interested. And with that, let's start the video. The first reason is that the Singaporean currency is stronger than the Malaysian ringgit. And as you can see at the time of producing this video, 1 Singapore dollars is equivalent to 3.52 ringgit. And the bigger this difference, the better it is for me because I will earn more and spend even lesser pushing or stretching the Malaysian ringgit as much as possible. And in addition to that, I also invest in instruments that are denoted in US dollars as well as Bitcoin. All three, the Singaporean dollars, the Bitcoin, as well as the US dollar denoted instruments, have appreciated over the past few decades against the ringgit. So the greater the distance I can separating the income and investments with the expenditure, which is in ringgit, the more I benefit, the more extra I have, preparing me for the rainy days or if I live very long. The second reason as to why I'm living in JB is that I can fully take advantage of the lower cost of living in Malaysia. And this is more limited to people who don't live in JB. For example, for people who live in Singapore, they would do shopping trips where they drive their SG car into JB to do all the consumption of goods and services and try to carry as much as possible to bring back into Singapore. But there are limited savings here because of several reasons. The first of which is that the Singapore authorities mandate if you're driving an internal combustion engine car to have a fuel tank that is at least 3/4 full. The custom officers that check this will ask the car to leave the queue and to top up the petrol before they're allowed to come back and to be cleared to go into JB. So that's the first half. The Malaysian authorities, knowing that the Singaporean drivers are coming in to take advantage of cheaper petrol because Malaysia does have one of the cheaper, if not the cheapest, in Southeast Asia. So the Malaysian authorities mandate the Singapore drivers to buy the most expensive grade of petrol, which is RON 97. This further shrinks the margin of difference in terms of cost savings. For people who decide that they will not drive, they'll take the public transport instead, then there's a physical constraint of how much you can carry with you to cross the checkpoints through public transport. If you can't carry as much, then you can't save as much. So that is one of the first constraints. The second constraint in terms of the cost savings, if you're not fully living in JB, is that if you leave Singapore and return back within 48 hours, then you can only be tax exempted for the first $100 worth of goods. Anything beyond $100, you must pay tax, unfortunately. And if you do stay out of Singapore for more than 48 hours, then the amount raises up to $500. And once again, if you're taking the public transport, there's only so much you can carry if you manage to find accommodation and stay more than 48 hours. So the savings, once again, is limited if you're not fully living in JB. Then the final thing is not everything can enter into SG. For example, the meats, whatever way, right, whether they are cooked or whether they are raw, cannot be brought into Singapore. Be it pork, beef, chicken, any kinds of meat, they cannot be brought over. And one of my favorite snacks is the bak kwa, and this is something I cannot bring into SG at all. The third reason is that Malaysia is humongous compared to Singapore, and it is full of diverse states and cities that one can explore, eat, buy, and see. So I literally, because I'm living in JB, just open my door, hop onto my car, and off I go. I can go on serendipitous trips that are planned. But if you're in Singapore, there is much more planning involved because you have to cross the causeway. So you have to take leave, you've got to get things ready, change your currencies and whatnot. And even the act of crossing the immigrations can be a very vexing one because the land checkpoints between Singapore and JB is one of the most heavy traffic in the world, right? So each time you cross the borders from Singapore to Malaysia or vice versa, it takes a lot of time and effort. And sometimes, unfortunately, the heavier the traffic, the higher the chances of accidents on the road. The fourth reason is because the private properties in Singapore are unaffordable to me. Whereas in JB, I can very easily acquire a property that gives me a lot more space compared to that of Singapore, so that I can take this space to live my best life, to be able to rest well, to enjoy the space that I have, to create, to do home projects, and even host my friends from Singapore when we're exploring Malaysia. The last reason is that I still have ties back in Singapore, and from time to time, I'll need to go back to Singapore to do a few things, either officially or on a personal note. And in such situations, being in JB is much more convenient for me to get into SG. In fact, I can go into SG and back within one day and come back home to rest. Whereas if I'm further up the Malay Peninsula, like for example, Malacca, KL, even Penang, it is not so easy. You need far more time. So some things, touch wood, could be urgent in Singapore that you need to physically be present. Then you need to plan way ahead. It's not something that you can do on the go, spontaneously, right? Like I need to go into Singapore right now, then you open your door and you leave. So the proximity to Singapore, in terms of distance, JB is the most suitable in the Peninsular Malaysia. The final reason, unfortunately, is a little bit sensitive, and I don't think I'm able to discuss it openly on this platform. So I put a link in the video description below for your reference and for you to click through to see what is that one more thing